Today on Writers on the Road, we're heading to Stephenville to meet with Shelly Kawaja and hear about how her hometown influenced her debut novel, The Raw Light of Morning. Every year at Writers at Woody Point, we invite authors from around the world to our small town in Newfoundland to tell their stories in our favorite place. Now we're hitting the road to visit some of our favorites in places that are special to them. I'm Stephen Brunt, and this is Writers on the Road. Shelly Kawaja is an author based in Corner Brook, Western Newfoundland. Her acclaimed debut novel, The Raw Light of Morning, won the 2022 BMO Winterset Award. Shelly grew up in Stephenville on Bay St. George, a unique place dominated by the ghostly remains of the Harmon Air Force Base, a massive Second World War and Cold War outpost of the United States military that operated between 1941 and 1966. Stephenville is a town that wears its history right up front. Decades after they left, signs of the American influence are still everywhere. Shelly wanted to have our conversation in a place that has great personal meaning for her, the front steps of the low brick building that houses the Kindale Public Library. Hey, Shelly, thanks for doing this.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me.
So we are at the Kindale Public Library in Stephenville, and we asked you where you wanted to do this, and you said you wanted to do it here. Why did you choose this spot?
Well, I wanted to do something in Stephenville, and the library is it's a meaningful place. I spend a lot of time coming to the library, and the years I spent in Stephenville were mostly my teenage years. And so I had, a little bit of a reputation. So I don't think everyone knew I came to the library all the time. I kind of had this double life. But yeah, I spent a lot of time at this library, and I would come with my book bag, and I would fill that full of books, and I would probably check out about half the books, and the other half I just took with me because I read so much, and I went through everything so quickly that I was actually embarrassed about the number of books I wanted to check out. But I'd like to think I brought them all back. And there was definitely at least one librarian who was on to me, but never said a word, and was just, happy, I think, to have, this young teen girl come hang out in the library checking out books. So
I do like the part of that where the part you hide of your double life is the library part.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that was the imposter at the time. So
I think that's great. And as somebody who worked in libraries for a chunk of my early teen years, I have a great affection for the places too. I think they're great. There are some library scenes in the book too, although they're school library scenes. Does that, again, I'm not going to try and pry biography out of a novel because that's not fair, but as kind of a safe space in the book.
Yeah, it was a safe space, and I have a great affection for libraries, and I feel like it was a personal, safe space for me, a place of comfort. There's what's more comforting than sitting in a room surrounded by books, and it's quiet, it's peaceful, no one's interrupting you, no one's bothering you. So it was a place to go, and to tap into that self, which I think was the true self, and the one that you project to the world is sometimes the one that is not as authentic as the other self. But school libraries, I spent a bit of time in the school library, but I think in the writing, I was kind of supplanting my experience more in the public library into the school scenes because it made more sense into the book. I was just kind of pulling from that library experience, but I placed it all in the school because the character, her scenes were in school. And but it meant the same thing to her. It was just in a different library, different place.
Now, Stephenville is, it's kind of a character in the novel in a lot of ways. Certainly, it's part of the texture of the novel. I don't know if it's as a visitor. I've been here a few times. We did Hockey Day in Canada down here one year. I was part of that. I've always had a bit of a trouble getting a handle on the place, though, geographically, direction-wise.
Yeah.
The kind of the presence of the base or the spectral presence of the base. Mm-hmm. But tell me about Stephenville, the place. What is this place?
It's an interesting little place, isn't it? Like I said, I grew up here through most of my teenage years. I went to high school here. And it's got its own vibe. Even when you think rural Newfoundland or small town Newfoundland, I don't think what comes to mind is this place that has this really heavy American influence on it. So I like playing with that and playing that up a little bit. But yeah, this was a small Acadian village until the Americans came and they built an army base here in the 40s. And it was huge. It was a big army base. They built the Harmon Airfield, they built the airport, new hospital, new schools. They built a movie theater, restaurants. So it transformed the town, and the population just exploded. And about 20 years later, after the Cold War ended and, they were finished with their training, they just packed up and left. But they left all this infrastructure behind, and they sold it to the town for $1, is the rumor. So the town inherited that, and they did what they could, I think, to keep that infrastructure up. They used it. It was the Stephenville Hospital for years, was the same hospital that was built by the Americans. But more than that, I think it's just created a feeling in the town where, I don't know, there's a real sense of abandonment, I think, where it was just, they had this like boom time, and then everyone left, and it was just kind of reverted back to what it was, only with these huge buildings left behind and these big empty buildings that they then had to manage. So there's this real sense of abandonment and just this like solid faith that, something else is going to happen. Like the next big thing is around the corner. So to me, it just has this kind of like frontier, like this American frontier town vibe, this really like Western Newfoundland frontier vibe. And I really like playing with that. I love the idea of that.
What did you, in terms of writing about it or setting the novel there?
Yeah.
When did you settle on that, and why? I know we all write about what we know to a point, or a lot of people do, or they begin writing what they know. But why did you want to drill down on that as part of the first novel?
That's a good question. I didn't at first. I actually wanted to kind of skate around it. So when I first started writing The Raw Light of Morning, I had it set up on the Northern Peninsula, and I tried to make it work in that environment, and it was more of like this outport town instead of, this kind of, and I mean, we're on the ocean here, but it's not an outport, and it's a really different feel. Like the ocean's there, but it's the backdrop. It is not the focal point. The town is here and the ocean's just kind of in the background. So I tried to change that up and make it fit a coastal community on the Northern Peninsula. I had the whole book written there. And no one told me to change it. It's just I let it sit for a while, and I picked it up and reread it one day, and I was like, no, this doesn't work. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel real enough. So then I rewrote the whole thing and reset it closer to what what made sense to me. So I set it in Stephenville, and what drove me to do that? I think I just wanted to capture like the gritty feel of the place and just this like realness to it. And you don't see that a lot in Newfoundland literature either. So, and I think because you don't see it a lot in Newfoundland literature, I shied away from doing it because there wasn't that path to follow, I guess. But then I came around and was like, yeah, I gotta do my own thing, right? Like this is the place I know. This is where a lot of this story needs to happen. So I just rewrote it and went with Stephenville.
Now, this is not a tourism commercial Newfoundland, or it's not a Newfoundland pastoral, and it's not a past, in some foggy past. It's very contemporary, and it's really gritty. It delves into poverty. It delves into all kinds of things that, again, a lot of the mythic Newfoundland. It's the Newfoundland literature, and the place it doesn't go. Could you talk a little bit about not just kind of digging down into that, and working through the place you knew and people you knew, experiences you may have had, but also doing it in a place where you have connections. It's because it's a tough portrait of the place.
Yeah, and that's hard, and that's probably why I shied away from writing it in Stephenville in the first place. Partly because I didn't have an example, I think, to really follow. And sometimes you read books and they just give you permission to do things, and I didn't feel that permission. So I eventually had to give it to myself and just do it. But I was nervous about that. I was nervous about people reading this book or looking for themselves in it, or just trying to pick apart the place as it's represented, or just being disappointed in how I represented it. But I made my peace with that, and I think it's just the power of the book really is digging into the grittier side of the place. I think that's where the energy comes from. And the book ultimately is about domestic violence, and it's about poverty, which I think poverty in itself is its own kind of trauma. And so it gets into, this kind of darker underbelly of a small town that's already a pretty gritty place. So there are definitely moments where the story gets a little heavy, a little bit dark. And yeah, and I was nervous about putting that out there. Partly like my personal connection to the place, my personal connection to the story. It's a fictional story, but I definitely pull some from some real life experiences. So all of that is very nerve-wracking, and my first instinct was to shy away, set it somewhere far removed where no one can try and associate themselves to it or associate me to it. And then I let all that go, and I was like, no, I'm going to go all in and just put it all out there. And people can love it or hate it. That is entirely up to them. But it's an honest book.
Do you? It's a tricky question, but I always think of it because Wayne Johnson always talks about how he thinks he couldn't have written. He can't write about Newfoundland living in Newfoundland. Mm-hmm. He's lived, all of his writing has been done.
Yeah.
He's lived all over the place, but he can't be here because it's too, it's too present and too kind of all consuming for him. I wonder about even leaving town and kind of having a 35,000-foot view. Is that essential to being able to write about it?
I think I needed more than that, to be honest. I've lived a lot of different places. I left Stephenville, I lived in St. John's, I lived in Toronto, and I taught English overseas. I was in South Korea and I was in China. I think for a little while I think I was addicted to travel for a little bit. I went place to place to place, and there was a good chunk of my life where I was not here at all and had no intention of ever coming back. If you were to tell me you're going to live back in Newfoundland, you're going to be in Corner Brook, an hour outside Stephenville, I would have been like, not on your life, like never going to happen. But then you miss your people, right? And my life is here, and I ended up back here, and just ended up not wanting to go again, and started to feel settled. And it was only then, I think, after all of that and all of the growth that comes with that I was able to sit down and write about it. And I like being here. I like being present. It's difficult. It's challenging. And sometimes you walk around town feeling a little bit naked, like you feel like you've exposed yourself to the town that you live in, and you're writing about the town that you live in. So it's not easy, but I find that a really powerful engine to write from as well. Like, I like the challenge of that, and it's almost like trying to find like a secret code or some way to tell a story so that you can say what you want to say and get away with it. So it's an added challenge. But
what gave you? Again, I'm a nonfiction guy and a journalist, so I kind of wrote as a job, and it's all kind of laid out where you go and what you do, and there's kind of a rhyme and reason to it. I always find people who write fiction, I'm astounded by that anybody can do it. It requires a kind of a tremendous amount of confidence, it seems to me, to go that way. Where did you find that? What was it that said to you, not just that I want to do this, but I can do it?
I think I read a lot growing up, and I grew up in a really tiny place, much smaller than Stephenville. It's really very middle of nowhere. And I read a lot as a kid, and I dabbled at writing, probably because I was so bored. So I do say I was forged in boredom as a writer. But my mom was always really supportive of it, and since I was about 5 years old, she was calling me a writer. And so I was like, yeah, I'm a writer. So it was always my favorite thing in school. If we had to write a story, I took that very seriously, and I would go home and I would write a story. And that stuck with me. But I think you rebel throughout your life too, against certain ideas. And my mom's an artist, and she'd been calling me a writer. And I was like, reach a certain age where I was like, I'm not a writer. That's not what I'm going to do. Like, I want a real job. I want to make a proper salary. I want to be practical. So I definitely pursued like the practical life. And I'd say about 15 years went by where I barely read anything of value. I just a bit of beach reading here and there. I didn't write anything. And it was only later in life, after getting that out of my system and actually reaching a point where I just felt like so deeply something was missing and I didn't feel like my whole self. And I started to remember a different time and of being a different way. And then we had kids and I ended up on maternity leave and I just suddenly had a little bit of time on my hands again. And you're busy, you have a new baby, but it was more alone time than I'd had in a long time. And I just picked up reading again and those wheels started turning again. And I don't even know how the right moment came about, but a moment came about where I sat down and I started writing. And then I did it again the next day. And then I did it again the next day. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just, stick with this and see where it goes. But at the time we were living in Norris Point. So I think a part of it too was moving back to rural Newfoundland and, I felt like moving to a different time and a different version of myself. And then it kind of came back to me what I used to love as a kid. And I was like, well, maybe I actually can do this. And so I stuck with it. But it began really just out of curiosity to see where it would go. There was no sense of determination. There was no, I'm going to finish this and have a book. There was no desire to even have a book. It was just a desire to write. And I just kept doing that until eventually I just had so much written that I felt like I should do something with it. And at that point I reached out for help because I didn't know how to write a book. I was just writing and it got long. And when I sat back and read it, it was just, it was all over the place. It was not a cohesive story. So I think at some point you do need help. You need to reach out. It's a craft and you got to learn it. You can't, it's not a natural talent. Nobody has a natural talent to write a perfectly crafted story. It's work, time, dedication. But fiction, I think for me, it was just the only way to do it because I do pull from real life, absolutely, and I probably always will, but it just begins with like this little seed of an idea, and it's the thing that, nags you at the back of your mind, or something you think about when you're trying to go to sleep at night, like the thing that keeps you up at night. But I took that seed and just kind of expanded it, filled in those gaps with fiction, and then expanded it again and filled it in with fiction, and just kept doing that and playing with it and changing it until it became just something else entirely. So it really became a world of its own. And at that point, it was just, trying to make that world beautiful. So it was changing it and polishing it off and just. So it started with kind of like this ugly little seed. It was not a pretty seed. It started with this ugly little seed and became what I felt was, its own beautiful little world. And so it has to be fiction, I think, to do that. And that's probably how I will always write.
How about, could you read something for us? Like, I don't know if you're going to read from the novel or are you going to read from new work?
I'm going to read from some new work, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So this is just a little piece about the town of Stephenville. It's called an inflected description. So there's no characters in it. It's just the place. So it's trying to tell the story of a place through the place itself. So it's kind of different, but I've never really known what to do with this little piece, and it just seems like the perfect kind of place and time to read it. So it's called A Town in Time. Stephenville, 1944. Every building to go up on base becomes the latest spectacle. The hangar is the biggest, a massive steel and glass dome built to house fighter jets and military equipment. The hospital is state-of-the-art and open to locals too. The school, for military kids only, is a feat of masonry. The theater is the last, a massive box of a building with a 40-foot screen that casts silver over the faces of the Harmon Air Force boys, something to keep them off the bars down on Main Street. Out in their uniforms every night, local girls falling over themselves like they'd never seen a man until the Americans washed up on shore. A quiet outport transformed into a sprawling army base with a complex system of roads and duplexes strung together like daisy chains, apartment buildings that block the sunset, hotels, hostels, trailer parks, and camps all filled to bursting with men. Young soldiers who sit in cockpits and practice drills in the sky above the tackle shop and general store, while fishermen smoke Marlboros and drink Lucky Lager, watching from the dusty shade of downtown. Doo-wop and pop drifts from open doorways at night, and every girl lines up, smiling her best smile to get inside. Promises kissed on dance floors in the pink light of the color wheel, or in stolen touches on the beach under stars. Young American dreams planted into hearts and minds and bellies, a swollen town on a rocky Newfoundland shore. Faces upturned and dreaming, squinting into the brightness. Stephenville, 2001. All the cool kids live on base. They skateboard without helmets and smoke weed in the abandoned hospital. There are tunnels, they say, left behind by the military, a complex underground network that connects bomb shelters, the hangar, and the airport. They search the underbelly of the hospital for an entry point, and every smashed padlock and removed door hinge takes them one step closer to finding it. They write, "Rita has the best tits, and I'll throw it in her for a hot dog," on decayed walls. The movie theater is closed for renovations again, but the rail out front is great for Tony Hawk slides, and there is a hatch to the basement. Not much down there but broken seats, a rotten Sears catalog, and a shattered picture of a soldier that doesn't look like anyone they know. The hangar is what they really want to crack, but the place is impenetrable, good for nothing except a cement block for jumps and a massive square of pavement for landing. On hot summer days, skateboards are abandoned in tall grasses, and down a rocky path the water supply sits opaque and still. A graveyard of military equipment. Anything that wasn't stored in the hangar was dumped in the water supply. Assault rifles, howitzers, torpedoes, maybe even a Matador or Hercules. No swimming, but they strip down to bare asses and dive in, kicking again and again for a bottom they can never reach before coming up for air.
Yeah, you brought us to the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. That is perfect. Well, thank you, and thanks for this, and thanks for inviting us here. Thanks for giving us the tour of Stephenville, past, present, fictional and real. Really appreciate it, and congratulations on the novel. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.